I really find this disappointing. I think the way the game of basketball has evolved internationally, it can be very close to the World Cup of soccer if everybody plays.
Yeah.
And when you look at like the World Cup and soccer, it's a year-round game too. Don't be fooled. But there is a prestige to playing in the World Cup that guys, gear their year for. If it's a World Cup year, they want to be as healthy as possible to show out in the World Cup. And I think that the mentality right now internationally is not there in basketball, and it's unfortunate because I really think we could have an absolute hell of a tournament if the best of the best play.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Hold on, real quick on that point. Correct me on this, but this is not the World Cup for basketball, right?
It is.
It is.
It is?
Yeah.
So what is Olympic? What is that?
Olympic basketball is Olympic basketball.
Isn't that bigger than the World
Yeah,
Cup?
well, it
It has been,
yeah.
but because
What's more important?
right
It depends
now,
who you ask.
yeah, but right now, historically, the Olympics have been. But to me, again, we're not talking 40 years ago when the U.S. just smokes everybody. Like, there's enough talent across the globe that this should be bigger and bigger and bigger if you get total buy-in from all the best guys.
Because how I look at it, how fans look at it, I'm sure the players look at this as well, because that's why we're not seeing the Currys, LeBrons, KDs, the top, whatever, Ja Morants, all these other guys. Because that's why I think we send our B and C teams to these FIBAs every time it comes around. We send the younger guys because we just don't think it's that important. I haven't even watched the game yet because I don't think it's that important. I don't really care to watch.
So
It should be.
Yeah, so
But it should be,
first of all, so this was when the Dream Team evolved back in the early 90s
92.
when they allowed in 92 when they allowed professional players to start playing in this event. You saw that the US was the top dog, and historically throughout the world, up until very recently, the World Cup has always been the premier basketball event. But that changed right around 10 or 15 years ago, and there's two things that I think are mainly responsible for that. Number one is the business of basketball. There's way too much money now in it, and guys are playing year-round, and the reality is for most of these guys, they have to protect they have to protect themselves because they're not getting paid to play in these events. Now, again, you have some places where, yeah, sure, guys are getting some money here and there, but that's, it's not significant compared to what they are getting professionally. And I could evolve in so many examples of that, but I'll we don't have enough. We could be here all night. Secondly is, so since the United States has had professional players, there was the Olympic disaster in 2004, and they've won every other Olympics since then. And then 92, 96, 2000.
Well, and I do want to say this, though. The Redeem team, they actually played in the World Championships in 2006. And they lost in the semifinal to Greece.
This same
the
type.
Redeem team. That was
that
LeBron and
No, but I'm saying this is the same tournament.
Same tournament.
Okay.
Yes. And that was where it kind of started with the Redeem team thing. They didn't have Kobe that time. They lost. They got Kobe in 2008 for the actual Olympics and took off from there.
Yeah.
But this, I'm just disappointed that this tournament is not where it should be. And trust me, as a huge soccer fan, all the same things that Juan said. The teams are paying the players way more money than they make for the national team. Now, there's a lot of money in the World Cup, a lot more in that than the FIBA World Basketball thing. But you're still dealing with like bonuses and stuff like that based on performance. You're not making the majority of your money playing for your country. But culturally, it's so significant to be a part of that World Cup. And it's so important to the legacies of soccer players, how they perform in that setting, that that drives it. And the basketball thing's not there
just not
yet.
there, yeah.
And it's just unfortunate because competitively I think it's getting close enough that you can, throw a blanket over a bunch of teams and feel like, hey, any one of these teams, things could break a
If
certain
everybody
way.
was playing.
And a lot of it too, like, I know a main issue is for some reason, and I don't know the intrinsics of this, but I know from dealing with some different cases. So, like, for example, you look at NBA rosters and you see who's playing in the World Cup and what teams have the most and what teams have the least. So Oklahoma City and Minnesota each have 6 guys playing in the World Cup. And Sacramento has 0. And I know that Oklahoma, Minnesota, the Magic, most teams cleared their guys to play, with insurance policies and things like that. That's why it took the Dominican Republic so long to integrate Karl Towns, because they had to make sure every T was crossed and I was dotted before he stepped on that floor for them. Right. Now, with Sacramento, Sabonis isn't playing. De'Aaron Fox isn't playing, and Chris Duarte for Dominican Republic. If he was still in Indiana, I'm sure he would be on our roster, but he's not. He's in Sacramento, and
you saying Sacramento may not be letting their guys play? Is that what you're getting at?
I'm saying that, but it also has a lot to do with how insurance policies are written, because there are some teams where it's written and they can get it cleared through the federations and things like that, but there's others that don't. And organizationally, that just kind of depends on how things go. Denver, Jokic announced he wasn't playing early yeah. And then Jamal Murray kind of went through a couple of the exhibitions and saw what a commitment it would take. Because listen, this thing too with the World Cup and the Olympics, it's a gigantic commitment. It's it's really like if you're an NBA player, you just go through an 8-9 month season, and then you're looking at, if you really do it right, you're looking at July 15th to September 15th. And I know the USA started August 1st or whatever, but still, like, it's you have to practice twice a day. You have to play exhibitions. You have to learn the difference in the game,
rules,
because FIBA and the NBA are two very, very different games. The NBA is predicated on individual play and athleticism, whereas FIBA is team play, ball movement, team defense, all that stuff. And that stuff takes time, and you're competing against teams, or you're competing against countries who literally most of these guys have been playing together since they were young. And the U.S. is throwing together guys, they're putting a roster together. They have a few practices. They get together, and then they just play. Now, obviously, the U.S. is way more talented than everybody else, and I really only see, like, in this iteration of the World Cup, I see 3 teams that could maybe beat them
if they had all their guys. Oh, you said?
Well, no, I'm
right
saying
now,
as it stands.
Because we don't have all of our guys.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a nice, but it's a very young American team.
Yeah.
And they're not every possible option.
So who are those teams that you think that could beat USA?
So in their initial group, the Greece, New Zealand, and Jordan, they're going to win all 3 of those games. They played Greece in an exhibition, and Greece is missing, besides Giannis, they're missing Nick Kalathis, who has been their point guard for the last 10-plus years. And a lot of that older generation who has, who accomplished a lot of things internationally in Greek basketball has moved on. And Greece's headline player right now is Thanasis. And Thanasis he's a borderline NBA player. But still, their continuity, and they have guys that have been playing in that system a long time, and they're going to be the toughest team that they have to play in the first 3 games, and then in the second 2 games, they will likely play Lithuania, who is missing a few guys. Valanciunas is their headliner, but they're missing Domantas Sabonis, who is their best player. And then they'll play Montenegro, who features Nick Vucevic and Kendrick Perry.
KP,
Okay,
baby.
KP.
Yeah, so KP, hopefully we'll get to see him go up against
Anthony Edwards.
Anthony Edwards in the USA team, but I don't see the US having an issue in each of those first 5 games, which will get them to
The semifinal.
the quarterfinals. So every team's goal in this is to qualify for the Olympics. You have to, if you're in the Americas, which that's the United States' region, they have to finish top 2 in out of the Americas. So essentially, you're competing against your group, but you're also competing against other teams that are not in your group. So with the U.S., they're competing against Dominican Republic, who they would likely face in the quarterfinal. If both teams progress that far, and then in that same category, you have Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico's a little bit. They're not what they have been. I mean, they have Tremont Waters, who you guys might remember him from LSU, and they have Jordan Howard, who played at Georgetown, and then they pretty much have a bunch of dudes who play in the Puerto Rican League, and most of them are they're second or third generation Puerto Rican, which that's another thing we can touch on, because there's a lot of controversy, let's say, surrounding some of these teams and who they naturalize and all that stuff. And then from the other teams you have in the Americas, you have Mexico, who's they qualified, but Juan Toscano Anderson he's now with he was with Utah.
Yeah,
I think he's still a free agent.
Yeah, I mean,
He announced his retirement from national team play, so I don't.
Oh, so he's not playing in this.
Yeah, he's not.
Why not?
So with Mexico, it's a little bit of a strange deal. Like the last 3 windows, or the last 3 times that they've tried to qualify for this event, they qualified in 2014, and they couldn't get any of their guys, any of their main guys besides Gustavo Ayón to show up.
Really?
It's strange, and I think there's an issue with between the federation and their players. And then in 2019, they did not qualify.
Okay.
But still, they had Juan Anderson play. They had they had another guy. I can't think of his name right now.
The great Eduardo Nájera?
No, Eduardo Nájera is actually I think he's a part of the federation now.
Okay.
But again, this has been happening for years. Like, they get to these world-class events, and all of a sudden they can't get they can't get the guys that they need to have their show up.
That's pretty wild.
Which is that's a story, I guess, for off the air, so I don't take up too much of your airtime. And then so I mentioned Mexico. You have Venezuela, who is in a tough group. They're in the Luka Doncic group with Slovenia and Georgia, who they have a I think besides Slovenia, Georgia has the best chance of getting out of that group. they're a pretty solid team. And then you have Brazil and Canada. So if the U.S. finishes, no matter where they finish, if they finish in the top 2 out of those 7 teams, they qualify for the Olympics. So case in point, last FIBA World Cup, they made it to the quarterfinal, lost to France, and then lost to Serbia. And then they ended up beating Poland in the 7th place game. But the goal was accomplished because 2 America's teams made it to the quarterfinal. It was Argentina and it was them. And Argentina ended up losing to Spain in the final. They took first in the Americas, and then U.S. finishing 7th was the next Americas team.
So the goal is to qualify for the Olympics.
Yeah.
But of course, Team USA is looking to just
win the damn
Yeah,
tournament.
win the whole thing.
exactly. Yeah,